do. They get you going through your day. Yeah, I was sort of addicted to watching her, but I even knew I couldn't just sit there and watch her all the time either. So what I'm saying about all of this is that it's important to recognize that, like, Obama as a president was demotivational. And here I was watching this TV show that was very motivational. I would never want anybody to draw a parallel between Oprah Winfrey and what I went through with that show where I was being forced to watch it and then, like, Wendy Williams' show. Because it's totally different experiences. So, what I want to say about all of this is that apparently she's out doing a podcast which is very overly personal about her life. And that's really her choice. She's being criticized or is confusing people some. Whatever it is, Megyn Kelly's claiming that she's being too personal. People, I don't know. When you have your own podcast, if you have issues you need to discuss, then you discuss them. But it's important to know what I talked about in the thought project of timing and relevance and place. And I think there was a culture that sprang up out of the Hollywood set with the gangs, the Russian FSB, all these women talking about rapes on shows, especially like on Oprah in the 90s and other shows, and putting themselves at risk, but also coaxing victims to put themselves at risk. It's really not a good idea unless you know what you're doing to be talking too much about your personal experiences in any kind of public platform. You have to know what you're doing with it. And so if she's saying things on the podcast that make people uncomfortable or boring, that's one thing. If she's like endangering herself, that's another. But I will tell you that I worked with a woman at the DCPCA who very clearly appeared to be her, who was completely insane and wasted the organization's money and time and was really abusive to minority groups that attended their events. Also, more importantly, she bears a direct resemblance to a woman who went by the name Nicole that showed up at the retirement home of a woman that I took care of, and I had received a call from management before I came in. They said this woman Nicole was going to be coming in, that the caregiver who was getting relieved would stay a few minutes just to be helpful, that previous caregiver from the night shift was calling to say there was a problem. This woman Nicole, who looked like Michelle Obama, showed up, and I ended up having to make a call again to management and create a sort of diversion with the other worker who was getting leave, who had to stay late then, to get her ushered out. And she was being really overly hostile and strange to a person that I took care of who had been a political appointee for Bill Clinton, who then ended up had been injured. And we'd had problems with other people in the building being threatening her. And I felt like this Nicole person was no less threatening and very much appeared to look just like Michelle Obama. And that was actually a common issue when the Obamas were in the DC area, is that they oftentimes that Michelle was oftentimes not with her Secret Service, not with her security, and out under aliases trying to see people and fake names and just really bizarre, erratic behavior. And of course, I explained to you how I later saw the same woman in a dementia ward in Arlington. So I think there's a very real chance that she's somebody who actually suffers from severe psychiatric issues. And it's important to note that realistically, when it comes to their marriage, if they're seeing other people, that's really up to them. It's really not everyone else's problem or fault. I really don't care. I would be surprised if former President Barack Obama was dating Jennifer Aniston. I'm not sure anyone would even mind. But there's a reality there that what is it? Is it like taxpayer funding? Like people worried about spending more money on security? Like what is it? Because when they have different relationships or who, supposedly has their heart, that always creates extra security concerns and issues. Also, he's no longer president. And she's no longer the first lady. And if what you're really saying is it's just a really bad podcast and haha, isn't that funny? Well, I'm not surprised by that. She wasn't a good performer. She never did well in public events. She always liked a lot of attention, and she really wasn't that interesting. And Laura Bush is even more boring, frankly, but also doesn't try to do podcasts. So anyways, the point about all of this is that I know Megyn Kelly was referring to her as someone who appeared to have been, a lawyer and had a fabulous life in Chicago and would have been going out to have, I would describe it as, would have simply been going out to have fabulous crab omelets with crispy potatoes on Sundays and champagne. And that was a life that we all assumed she had, and that she took on Obama and became the first lady and first lawyer with him, and this great fight, and it just isn't who she turned out to be at all. I, in the end, came to the conclusion, frankly, after my experience of watching DCR, that she actually had dementia, or that she was actually just psychotic. and that she most certainly would not have been a successful lawyer enjoying a champagne brunch life and working 60 hours a week in Chicago for a corporate law firm. I don't think she would have been that successful at all, based on her behavior at all. And so where the, I don't know, people, it's just like there's no there. I don't expect this person to be good at podcasts. I don't expect her to provide good material, and I don't expect anyone to really even care beyond making fun of her. That's like all she's really gonna get. So, moving on, I need to do a little story on Nicole Kidman. She's got this movie Holland coming out, which was just screened at XSSW, and it's unfortunate it was supposed to be filmed up in Holland, Michigan, near here, and it actually wasn't. The majority of it was filmed in Tennessee, and it was supposed to be a good source of information about Michigan. It's really not, because based on the actual location. March 9th, 2025. So XSSW premiere, whatever. Anyway, so it was actually filmed in Nashville, Mount Juliet, Springfield, and then also Middle Tennessee's Worldwide Stages Studios. Middle Tennessee's Worldwide Stage Studios. And it's unfortunate that WBKR 92.5 noted this all in 2024. And it's important to also note, fun facts, 519 miles from Nashville, Tennessee to Holland, Michigan. So here's what I think about Nicole Kidman. She's kind of got away with being seen as the nice girl after her situation with Tom Cruise. And like they're almost so far apart, it seems like totally irrelevant to each other, because he's been with Katie Holmes since then. But there's the reality that, she's... I feel like in some ways, I'm like, is she trying to bully me? Like, why is she making fun of Michigan? This Holland, Michigan movie just looks like it totally makes fun of Michigan. And she's got away with making a number of films where I kind of like them, and then I look at them again, and I think, no, this is really weird. I just look at some of them that I think the messaging in them seems like it would be really supportive to women in our lives and make us all feel better, but then somehow it's like nuts. Like, Baby Girl is this movie about her sleeping with a younger man and trying to control him. And the messaging to other women, like, what if one of us even watched the movie, would someone else think that we were like that, because there's so much surveillance now. And not even just that you would get confused and think that was your life. And, like, To Die For had this fantasy ending with her character dying, and it's supposedly based on Cersei, which caused a lot of problems with Cersei actually really hating her and angering everyone else. So, like, what I'm saying is she's problematically made films in the past that, as much as I wanted to enjoy them, it just seems to get everybody in trouble with what she says in them. And I'm not sure they're entirely truthful. They often tend to be based on a sort of fantasy of what most of us as women dealing with this Russian FSB or Trinidad crap are dealing with, and it just puts us more all at risk. So I'm not going to be watching Holland, Michigan, by the way, the movie. And, I would also just say that, like, Practical Magic, for example, I really enjoyed it, but it had a lot of really weird fallacies in it. It came to a point where I just stopped watching it. I, tried to watch it for the last time this past fall and was just done. I'm done. Because there were too many fallacies in the film. And I will say, at least for Nicole Kidman, she uses her own voice, she wears her own face, that she just does makeuping and costuming. So I'm not totally ripping on her. It's just that there's some times where I feel like she's made some really strange decisions that worried me. And, I say all this in the context of, she's made some pretty good films and just stuck with those despite the circumstances of being in this bizarre market with, like, J-Lo, who has this dumb... fake face, mask, makeup that she wears, can't do anything on her own, weird fake voices. Like, she's in a context of that, because she's up against that, and she's appeared at events, like, supposed to be events for Fashion Bazaar magazine, with Dua Lipa, who is completely and totally fake. And it's hard to know what anyone's really... And then you have, like, Angel Studios trying to put out a film, 2 years ago that turned to be totally run by cartels and was actually produced by child molesters. So she's not, in that category where she's trying to make, hero films and then they're actually produced by child molesters who really aren't out to save kids, I just want you to get, a context of that. Because this stuff is just too... all I'm saying is... In viewing Nicole's films, be careful that other people don't misinterpret who you are for viewing them, depending on your circumstances, and be careful about the fact that she's had some kind of relationship to Buffalo Bill, and I'm not sure she's actually on his team as much as she seems to be undermining him, and so whatever she's doing is inherently dangerous. So it isn't really just like watching a movie with her. And that's all I'm really going to say about that at this point. I want to also note for you that Playboy, where I was doing some work, is still not fixed. And bizarrely, I remember when I was going through it, the Buffalo Bill tried to suggest to me that I go on and on and talk about how I had been raped by all these different men from Endeavor and the trafficking I went through. An organization that's now a terrorist group by the U.S. government, may just be a bunch of guys who are going to be deported, women as well. But I thought, I had to laugh. I thought, what kind of weirdo thinks somebody would want to hear stories anywhere about being raped on Playboy? That's just awful. So, I mean, it's like laughably bad. And so that's kind of the thing that she's sort of up against contact-wise. So I'm not ripping her entirely. I'm just saying, there's some fallacies with this movie, and, I'm just kind of going to watch her, and we'll continue this in another episode. So this has been another episode of Simply Say It. It was nice to see you today. Have a good one. Oh, here, I'll put this on the end.